With the arrest of Mr. Jefferson Hope, a story that took place across the ocean was revealed to us. In the central portion of the great North American continent, there lies an arid and repulsive desert, which for many a long year served as a barrier against the advance of civilization. The story took place on the 4th of May, 1847, when a traveler and a little girl decided to pray there before the last moment came. The name of traveler was John Ferrier. There were originally 21 people in his team, but now only he and the little girl were left. The rest died of thirst on the road, and now both of them would soon follow in the footsteps of others. Buzzards, whose coming is the forerunner of death, circled over the heads of the two wanderers, and then settled upon some rocks which overlooked them. At this time, a great caravan of Mormons upon its journey for the west happened to pass by and rescued the two people from death. Of course, this kind of assistance is by no means free.
"If we take you with us,"
the leader of Mormons said, in solemn words,
"it can only be as believers in our own creed. Will you come with us on these terms?"
"Guess I'll come with you on any terms,"
said Ferrier, with such emphasis that the grave elders could not restrain a smile. Therefore, the two castaways, John Ferrier and the little girl who had shared his fortunes and had been adopted as his daughter, accompanied the Mormons to the end of their great pilgrimage, and they finally reached the broad valley of Utah bathed in the sunlight beneath them, and learned from the lips of their leader that this was the promised land, and that these virgin acres were to be theirs forevermore. As year succeeded to year, little Lucy Ferrier grew taller and stronger, her cheek more ruddy, and her step more elastic. The bud blossomed into a flower, and the young girl was about to meet the love of her life. It was a warm June morning. Lucy Ferrier met Jefferson Hope because of an accident that almost killed her.
"I guess you are the daughter of John Ferrier,"
the young chap remarked.
"I saw you ride down from his house. When you see him, ask him if he remembers the Jefferson Hopes of St. Louis."
"Hadn't you better come and ask yourself?"
she asked demurely.
"He has a good deal to thank you for, and so have I."
"I'll do so."
The young fellow seemed pleased at the suggestion, and his dark eyes sparkled with pleasure. Afterwards the two said goodbye to each other. When the flower of Utah had vanished from the sight of Jefferson Hope, the love which had sprung up in his heart made he swore in his heart that he would not fail in this if human effort and human perseverance could render him successful. Jefferson Hope called on John Ferrier that night, and many times again, until his face was a familiar one at the farmhouse. He soon became a favorite with the old farmer, who spoke eloquently of his virtues. On such occasions, Lucy was silent, but her blushing cheek and her bright, happy eyes showed only too clearly that her young heart was no longer her own. John Ferrier had no objection to his adopted child choosing her own marriage partner, even though it went against the rule of the faith he serves. The old farmer remained devout in his faith, but he did not want to see his daughter join any Mormon's harem. One fine morning, a stout, sandy-haired, middle-aged man came to visit. John Ferrier, who recognized the visitor, was filled with trepidation, and then ran to the door to greet the Mormon chief, the great Brigham Young.
"Brother Ferrier, it is of that daughter that I would speak to you."
After a brief greeting, the leader of the Mormons said,
"Stangerson has a son, and Drebber has a son, and either of them would gladly welcome your daughter to their house. Let her choose between them."
"You will give us time,"
Ferrier said in a pleading tone.
"My daughter is very young. She is scarce of an age to marry."
"She shall have a month to choose,"
said Young, rising from his seat.
"At the end of that time she shall give her answer."
After leaving these words, the leader of Mormon left. Lucy, who had been eavesdropping, came out, and the old farmer looked at his adopted daughter.
"I could not help it."
One glance at her pale, frightened face showed him that she had heard what had passed. Lucy said, in answer to his look.
His voice rang through the house. "Oh, father, father, what shall we do?"
Ferrier remained silent for some little time with his brows knitted.
I guess we had best shun out of Utah.
Next morning, John Ferrier sent his message to Jefferson Hope within his acquaintance. As he returned his farm, he was surprised to find two young men in possession of his sitting room. They were the husband candidates chosen by the prophets for Lucy. John Ferrier, who had already made up his mind, fiercely drove the two young people out, which also put him in an extremely dangerous situation. Imagine the rumors circulating among the Mormons. He trembled at the vague, shadowy terrors which hung over him, and the fear soon became a reality. Upon rising next morning he found, to his surprise, a small square of paper pinned onto the coverlet of his bed just over his chest. On it was printed, in bold straggling letters,
29 days are given you for amendment, and then.
He crumpled the paper up and said nothing to his daughter, but the incident struck a chill into his heart. Day followed day, and as sure as morning came, John Ferrier found that his unseen enemies had kept their register. At last, when he saw 5 give way to 4, and that again to 3, he lost heart, and abandoned all hope of escape. Yet the old man never wavered in his resolution to part with life itself, before he consented to what he regarded as his daughter's dishonor. The night before the last of the allotted time, however, Jefferson Hope finally arrived, in a most bizarre way. He was lying flat on his face upon the ground, with arms and legs all sprawl.
The house is watched on every side. That is why I crawled my way up to it.
What are we to do?
Tomorrow is your last day, and unless you act tonight you are lost. I have a mule and 2 horses waiting in the Eagle Ravine. You had best wake Lucy.
After simple preparations, the 3 of them, led by Hope, secretly left the place where Fury and his daughter had lived for 12 years.
Hurry on, hurry on.
Jefferson Hope gasped from time to time.
We are through the line of sentinels. Everything depends on speed. Hurry on.
After a hurry and thrilling escape, they finally passed the outlying post of the chosen people and left Utah, with freedom seemingly lay before them. About the middle of the second day of their flight, their scanty store of provisions began to run out. Hope had to go searching for the needs of life alone, after temporarily settling Lucy and her father. It took nearly 5 hours for Hope to return, longer than expected. A vague, nameless dread came over him. He involuntarily thought of a horrific rumor circulating in Mormons, called the Avenging Angels. And then he hurried onwards frantically. He was too late. There was no living creature near the remains of the fire. Animals, man, maiden, all were gone. Lighting a torch to examine the little camp, Hope eventually found a newly dug grave.
John Ferrier, formerly of Salt Lake City, died August 4, 1860.
Stood against the last silent resting place of the old farmer. Jefferson Hope determined to devote his life to revenge. Fortunately, he happened to meet an acquaintance named Cooper, a Mormon. Hope accosts him with the object of finding out what Lucy Ferrier's fate had been.
She was married yesterday to young Drebber.
The Mormon looked at him with undisguised astonishment.
Married, you say?
Married yesterday. No one won't have her very long though. For I saw death in her face yesterday. She is more like a ghost than a woman.
The prediction of the Mormon was too well fulfilled. Poor Lucy never held up her head again, but pined away and died within a month. All Hope could do was, in the early hours of the morning of the burial, stoop over her. He pressed his lips reverently to her cold forehand, and then, snatching up her hand, he took the wedding ring from her finger. For some months Hope lingered among the mountains, leading a strange wild life, and constantly looking for opportunities to satisfy the fierce desire for vengeance. Exposure and want of wholesome food were wearing him out, however, so he reluctantly returned to the old Nevada mines, there to recruit his health, and to amass money enough to allow him to pursue his object. During his nearly 5 years of absence, there had been a schism among the chosen people, and hence Drebber and Stangerson left the Utah with no one knowing where they went. Many a man, however vindictive, would have abandoned all thought of revenge in face of such a difficulty. But Jefferson Hope never faltered for a moment. Hope traveled from town to town through the United States in quest of his enemies. Year passed into year, his perseverance was rewarded. It was but a glance of a face in a window. Hope and Drebber recognized each other. Before Hope came to take revenge, Drebber hurried before a justice of the peace, accompanied by Stangerson, who had become his private secretary, and represented to him that they were in danger of their lives from the jealousy and hatred of an old rival. That evening Jefferson Hope was taken into custody, and not being able to find sureties, was destined for some weeks. When at last Hope was liberated, those two culprits had departed for Europe. Funds were wanting, so Hope had to collect enough before departing for Europe, and tracked his enemies from city to city, until they had journeyed on to London, where he at last succeeded in revenge.